Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
On that front, we have some breaking news. Tonight, Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon has gotten his hands on a document that has never been seen publicly before, which appears to show that Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security requested to transfer about $10 million out of the budget for FEMA this year and into the coffers of ICE to support ICE's detention and deportation programs for immigrants. Senator Merkley's office believed the transfer of these funds happened this summer, just in time for hurricane season. Senator Merkley will join us live in just a moment. But I want to show you the document that his office has obtained. I have it here. I think we can put it on screen. Thank you. It's titled, as you can see, Department of Homeland Security Fiscal Year 2018 Transfer and Reprogramming Notifications. In other words, this is the whole list of money that Homeland Security took from one agency and moved to another. And the practice of transferring monies between agencies, that is not unusual in itself, but it is unusual to see in one of these documents a whole column full of money being deleted from the FEMA budget less than a year after Hurricane Maria, on the cusp of this year's hurricane season, apparently to bolster the government's ability to lock up and deport immigrants. Nearly $10 million taken out of FEMA, almost all of it going to ICE in order to fund more detention beds and ICE's transportation and removal program. Again, this is all according to this budget document obtained by Senator Jeff Merkley's office. Senator Merkley is on the Appropriations Committee. He's not on the Homeland Security Subcommittee there, so he doesn't necessarily have direct oversight here. But Senator Merkley's office tells us tonight that they believe this document is authentic. They believe these budget transfers out of FEMA instead to ICE, that these budget transfers, they believe, did happen this summer. Just before airtime, the Department of Homeland Security, in our efforts to independently verify this document, we did finally get a response to them, and they all but confirmed that Senator Merkley is right here. Just a few moments ago, Department of Homeland Security just confirmed to us that these monetary transfers out of the FEMA budget were made. A DHS spokesperson didn't dispute the authenticity of the document to us, and instead told us that the money didn't come from any of our disaster response and recovery efforts. But again, it appears that it did come from FEMA. We couldn't get any elaboration on that. The spokesperson said that's all they could tell us on such short notice. But we're happy to at least have that. Joining us now is Senator Jeff Merkley, Democrat of Oregon. He is a member of the Appropriations Committee. Senator, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you for letting us know that you'd received this document. We've been doing our own due diligence, trying to sort out what this means. What's your understanding of what this means, bottom line?
Well, it means that just as hurricane season is starting, because it generally starts June 1st, the administration is working hard to find funds for additional detention camps. And, of course, this is all part of the child separation policy. And that's how this information came into my hands, because of my work on this issue of trying to stop the child separations. But, in fact, so $10 million comes out of FEMA when we're facing a hurricane season, knowing what happened last year, and then look what we've had since. A hurricane just barely missed Hawaii, a tropical storm that almost became a hurricane hit Mississippi, and now we have this hurricane Florence bearing down on the Carolinas. I find it extraordinary. And by the way, Rachel, the chart you put up is the same chart I have in my hand right here. It says that money came from response and recovery, right on it. So I would dispute the statement that this has no bearing on addressing the challenges from hurricanes.
It is Wednesday, the 12th of September of 2018, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Will no one rid me of this priest? Ooh, my, oh my, oh my. Well, Donnie's still at it. Can you believe that guy fist bumping on 9/11? I mean, what a somber behavior, don't you think? I guess that's what capitalists do because, you know, there is a moral imperative to glorify self during tragedy. And I'm kind of mixing popular metaphors here because there is another Scarelli type of pharmaceutical CEO who says there's a moral imperative to jack up the price of his compound that he has secured the rights to by 400%. And that the FDA is nothing but a corrupt and Gestapo-type organization. Yeah, well, that guy's going to fit right in with the Trumpian attitude of me, 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 me. And I don't know. I guess that's called self-determination now, isn't it? Everything's topsy-turvy, and we can only hope. And when I say hope, that doesn't mean sitting on your duff and watching the world go by. No, I mean hope. Hope means getting up off your duff and going to vote. We need to have overwhelming numbers. They could only work the margins. 70,000 over 3 counties? Come on. In 3 different states. Come on, that's all they were able to do. And look at the havoc that they have wrought. Well, Susan Collins thinks that crowdfunding to, kind of get her to oppose Kavanaugh is a bribe. And apparently, the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, over the years, from the Federalist Society, from the Kochs, from even NRA Russian oligarch funds. Those are just, donations to her good cause. Susan, we see right through you. Yeah. Lucy taking the football away again. And maybe we do need some new blood who says, look, you pull that ball away from me when I'm trying to kick it, I'm kicking you this time. Tennis umpires in Great Britain are said to be meeting to boycott any matches that Serena Williams plays because of her terrible behavior at the U.S. Open. Give me an effing break. Once again, this is BS. All that they are talking about is that they can't stand an angry black woman telling them what to do. Well, she never told them what to do except apologize. Any referee who says they want to boycott, well, maybe they just don't work at all anymore. Kick them out. Maybe that part of the sports world needs to have some new blood, don't you think? Well, Putin says that the 2 Skripal poisoning suspects are civilians. Okay. Which I guess that just means they're, mercenaries for hire. Independent contractors. Yeah, so, and even Laura Ingraham's brother says that she's a monster. Yeah, it's pretty bad when that happens. And I would think they ought to know. Yep. Well, what's on the rest of the menu? Of course, that was Jeff Merkley at the top with Rachel, revealing that looks like the Trump administration, just before this hurricane season, took $10 million from FEMA and gave it to ICE so they can round up refugees and little babies, lock them up, and send them away. That's much more important than, preparing for the hurricane. All right. Well, I can understand Trump's thinking behind this. I mean, just follow me here, okay? There's no way you're going to stop the hurricane. But damn it, you can keep the goddamn effing brown people from coming here. You got to do what you can do. You can't tilt into the wind and think you can stop it. But you can terrorize families that are of the brown hue. Mm-hmm. Oh, and speaking of terrorizing, that cop in Dallas who went into her neighbor's apartment and shot him dead because they said she was, really tired from a long shift, and she parked her car, on the fourth floor, not the third. Well, it turns out, apparently, this still has to be proven, but the scuttlebutt is that she had worked her 15-hour shift, came home, and complained about the noise upstairs where her neighbor, the person that she shot, lived. And neighbors reported hearing a woman's voice pounding on a door, saying, "Let me in, let me in." And then shots fired. I guess she needed her sleep. Well, what's on the rest of the menu here at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Another GOP lawmaker is outed as a leader of a white supremacist hate group. Wow. Another one. It seems like the whole party is like that, or at least they're embracing it. Yeah, for effect. House Republicans have a dark plan to pack the federal courts and entrench right-wing control. Well, this isn't anything new. This is the Soviet model. This is the 70-year plan. They've been working on this since, the New Deal. And at a recent town hall, Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley begged his constituents to stop asking him about Kavanaugh. He just doesn't want to hear it. After the break, we move to the chef's table, where, thanks to the Republican tax bill, the deficit is set to hit $1 trillion 2 years earlier than expected. Thanks. And U.S. regulators rejected Wells Fargo's plan to repay customers who were pushed into unnecessary auto insurance policies. Wow, that's like a trifecta. You got the credit card scam where Wells Fargo was signing up their account holders to credit cards they never wanted or asked for. You got the mortgage scam, and now you got the auto insurance scam. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will notice the chat room link. But even before you get to the bottom of the homepage, right when you first open up the page, well, of course, you'll see the player button right there. And boy, I got to tell you, that works like a charm. Oh, you got to try it out. But you'll also see scrolling some little enticements to make sure that you're registered to vote and that you will register to vote. So check that out. And don't leave it to chance. Okay, you never know if you've been scrubbed. And they do that now quite efficiently. Well, at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the chat room link on the right of the page, monitored by Kelly Lincoln. And do check out her show with Ricky on Saturdays. That is the Roundtable Roundhouse Power Hour. And they put it together, and they've had to do some taped live shows recently, but I think they may be getting ready to go back live, so you can call in, and that's what they like to do. To the leftish of the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com is the donate button, which is donate contribute button, which is our way of asking you to help Resistance Radio to keep resisting the way that we were meant to resist. And your generosity does keep the lights on And we truly are unable to do this without you. We have some tiers, different tiers in which you could donate. You can donate any amount you want. We got the $1 tier, of course, and if you want, we'll give you a shout-out on social media for, well, being on the right side of history. I mean, come on. You don't want to be like some of my family members who have chosen not to be on the right side of history. And, it won't be good for them. It won't be good at all. Another tier is that $5 tier, and we have some world famous Netroots Radio bumper stickers, and we have these little square cube type things that we call ad blocks with the NR for Netroots Radio, and so we'll send you one of those by USPS if you'd like. There's also the $10 tier right now, and you'll get a bumper sticker if you'd like sent USPS. But we'll also get you right in your inbox. I mean, you don't even have to go searching. Right in your inbox or where you'd like it. The daily West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy show. And you won't have to look. It'll be right there for you. Let's see. You can follow Netroots Radio on Twitter at Netroots Radio. Check us out over on Facebook. And you can follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. I put up show notes and links on my Daily Kos diary, and you can find me on Daily Kos as Justice Putnam. You can follow the show on Facebook, and you can also follow the show on Twitter. We are known as at Cookbook West. Just type in West Coast Cookbook, but the handle there at Twitter is at Cookbook West. Podcasts of the show can be had by way of Spreaker, TuneIn, iTunes, YouTube, etc., etc., etc. Or if you become a Patreon $10 tier member, you'll get it right in your inbox. How easy is that? All right. Okay, let's get on with this first article here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Well, racists and xenophobes are certainly welcome in the Trump GOP. Josh Israel of Think Progress penned this piece. Oh, an Oregon-based Alt Weekly has exposed State Representative Mike Neerman, of course a Republican, and he's the vice president of the Oregonians for Immigration Reform, who the Southern Poverty Law Center designated as an anti-immigrant hate group with ties to prominent white nationalists, eugenics advocates. Well, eugenics. Wow. Well, we got a president right now, or a guy who calls himself a president, who says, it's really just all about my genes. I have superior genes. I think that you don't. You can always tell. Well, Neerman denied to the paper that he holds the vice president position, but concedes he is an officer of the organization, which lists him as VP on his website. I'm not a vice president of the organization. I'm a capo. Of course you are. Neerman is currently pushing to repeal Oregon's protections for undocumented immigrants. Now, in the aftermath of Trump embracing racism and xenophobia and welcoming the very fine people on both sides into his party, the revelation about Neerman is the latest in a string linking white nationalists and anti-immigrant groups to Republican office holders around the country. Since winning the Republican nomination for Florida governor, former Representative Ron DeSantis, who just became former, by the way, has drawn attention to his racist dog whistle attacks on his Democratic opponent, who just happens to be black. And New York State congressional nominee Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is of Puerto Rican descent, for his history of giving speeches at racist events and for serving as a moderator of a far-right Facebook group used for posting racist memes. A spokesperson has claimed DeSantis was not aware he was a moderator. Really? Now, other moderators of that group included Virginia GOP Senate nominee Corey Stewart, Montana Auditor and GOP Senate nominee Matt Rosendale, West Virginia Attorney General and GOP Senate nominee Patrick Morrisey, Texas GOP Congressional nominee Daniel Crenshaw, Nevada GOP Congressional nominee Danny Tarkanian. Yeah, the kid of that Tarkanian. Yeah, bounce around, Danny, bounce around. And former Arizona State Senator Kelly Ward. Wow. Talk about a confederacy of dunces. After Representative Rod Blums, of course he's a repug of Iowa, apparent involvement in the Facebook group came to light in recent weeks. He tweeted out an AP reporter's cell phone number rather than respond directly to an inquiry about the group. Meanwhile, his fellow Iowan Representative Steve King has drawn no rebuke from GOP leadership despite years of promoting racist propaganda. Well, it looks like the GOP-controlled House Judiciary Committee wants to expand the federal courts and limit their ability to overrule Trump's authority. Wow. Talk about a committee of toadies. This article is by Matthew Chapman out of Alternet as we continue here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Thanks to Donald Trump's nomination of far-right D.C. appeals court judge Brett Kavanaugh, and the president's prodigious rate of equally far-right nominations to lower courts, Republicans are on the cusp of extending their control of the federal court system for another couple of decades. Well, I'm going to be really old when we can turn this one over if we let it. But even that is not enough for the GOP. According to Roll Call, legal reporter Todd Ruger, the House Judiciary Committee is scheduled to introduce a series of bills on Thursday that would dramatically expand the number of judges Trump could appoint and reduce the authority of existing judges to block his executive actions. The first bill, introduced by Representative Bob Goodlatte of Virginia, would add 52 new district court judges, which is more than double the number of district court judges nominated by Trump to be confirmed in the last 2 years. See, they hold up nominations and hearings for Democrats for years, every time. I mean, they are never, ever, ever able to get even basic hearings for many of Democrats' appointments and nominations to the bench, let alone other aspects of government. Trump has been a big advocate of having fewer judges. He can't believe that we have judges, first of all. The rule of law? What's that? I'm a crook. We don't believe in the law. We make the law. We're the rulers and we're the law. What I think makes it right. Well, so, with the caseloads, maybe 52 district judges are needed. But, of course, they're all coming out of the Federalist Society Farm Club now, aren't they? Well, so Trump hasn't even nominated judgeships, but they're going to try to keep it, in-house. They are a family, a mob family, aren't they? That's what they confess to. The second bill would add 5 new judges to the Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit and then split that court into 4 divisions, a blatant attempt to let Trump add right-wing cronies to a liberal, California-based court that has stymied Trump on a number of issues. We'll put it in the D.C. court. They're pretty conservative. Well, there's nothing inherently wrong with adding more judges to federal courts. In fact, the Judiciary Conference asked Congress for these exact increases. But the only reason there is such a need for new judges is because The GOP repeatedly refused to grant the Judiciary Conference's request for more judgeships during President Barack Obama's tenure. In fact, according to former White House Deputy Counsel Chris King, Obama's presidency was the first to not have Congress increase the number of federal judgeships since the Ford administration. As with the Merrick Garland nomination, Republicans strategically stalled so a GOP president could have all the seats. The one bright spot in this bleak picture is that none of these bills will have anywhere close to the 60 votes needed to pass the Senate, even if they make it through the House. But they illustrate how relentlessly determined Republicans are to reshape the judicial branch in their right-wing image. And I keep reminding people once again, it's the Soviet model. It's the 70-year plan. They've been doing this since the New Deal. Bistro Cafe, part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. It's merely an egg dish with hollandaise, folks, and a really lovely hollandaise at that. This one also is brought to us by Matthew Chapman from Alternate. With D.C. Appeals Court Judge Brett Kavanaugh's Supreme Court hearings over, and his record of lies to the Senate and legal extremism laid bare for all to see, voters are demanding answers from their senators. One senator who seems highly unwilling to talk about the issue is Chuck Grassley, Repug of Iowa, who chairs the Senate Judiciary Committee. Well, of course he does. In fact, at a town hall in I'm never going to say this, Osceola, Grassley was bombarded with so many Kavanaugh questions that he started imploring the attendees to ask about something else. And I would, as, I don't know, an outsider, ask, how the hell do you pronounce Osceola? Is it Osceola? It's got to be Osceola. Well, Grassley told his constituents, if you folks are wondering why we're talking about Kavanaugh all the time, if somebody came here to talk about tariffs, somebody came here to talk about budgets, somebody came here to talk about something else, raise your hand. Okay, how do you pronounce Osceola? And how do you pronounce Kavanaugh? Is it Kavanaugh or Kavanaugh? I say Kavanaugh. Grassley has been instrumental in the far-right reshaping of federal courts since assuming the chairmanship in 2015. He worked to ensure Supreme Court nominee Merrick Garland never saw even a hearing, then immediately began ramming through Trump's judicial picks, including several with extreme activist agendas. Well, it's disaster capitalism now, isn't it? Tragedy occurs, you ram this stuff through. People are just in shock. They won't oppose you. They can't. For the Kavanaugh confirmation, Grassley, who has long claimed to be a champion of open records, did an end run around the National Archives and instead tasked W. Bush's private attorney, Bill Burke, a close ally of Kavanaugh, with curating records from Kavanaugh's years as staff secretary in the Bush administration. Well, isn't that convenient? Well, Grassley then designated most of those documents committee confidential, including some that show Kavanaugh lied under oath. And, those documents would have been sealed for the public, and even the full Senate had Democratic members of the committee not ignored Grassley and to release them anyway. And thank you. Kamala Harris. Thank you, and thank you, Cory Booker. Grassley knows full well that his confirmation and the tactics he is using to force it through could be the most consequential moment of his entire Senate career. Yet, for some reason, he does not want to discuss it with the voters. Well, of course not. It's obvious. Well, let's get to our break, and when we come back, we'll go through weather from around the world and finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. This week, something old, something new. Searching, by USC Film School buds, co-writers, and director-producer duo Anish Chiganti and Sev Ohanian, is a strange yet appealing beast. The audience sees the entire film through various screens from computers, phones, security cams, etc. We watch conversations take place in FaceTime, in emails, and in chat messages, and the excitement of the chase is taken over by the excitement of the click. However, Searching is not a movie about technology. It's not a movie about social media. It's an even-handed thriller about a man who loses connection with his teenage daughter after the death of his wife, her mother, and then physically loses his daughter when she goes missing. That's because Chiganti and Ohanian aren't interested in making gimmick films. In fact, when production company Bazilyev's pitched them this, their first feature film, looking to follow the footsteps of 2014's Unfriended, Chiganti turned them down. That's because Chiganti and Ohanian want to make films that emotionally move people. And Searching does so through three vehicles. An opening that approaches the opening of Pixar's Up, the quiet, solid acting job of Michelle Law, and the film's anchorman John Cho, whose face is just a map to a world of feelings. But here's the thing. Even though our protagonist's family is played by Cho, Law, and Joseph Lee as brother/uncle, Searching is not a film about being Asian either. It's a thriller about a middle-class American family, and guess what? For once that family isn't white. And while we need films that celebrate cultural difference, performing artists of color have said for years that they are not summed up by the fact that they are not white. And Searching is a testament to the fact that movies like this that almost always feature white protagonists don't have to. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Clinton Johnston. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our page on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
Hey kids and parents, it's back to school time. As you shop for school supplies and get ready for class, make sure you have emergency plans in place. Did you know that emergency preparedness plays a major role in school life? Throughout the year, schools actively prepare for natural disasters, outbreaks, and other emergency situations. Students and parents need to be aware and learn what to do during an emergency. Every family should build an emergency kit, make a family disaster plan, and be informed about events that could affect their community. Parents, take a few extra steps to help children be prepared. Make sure they know the full name, address, and phone numbers of parents or guardians. In our high-tech world of cell phones, memorizing emergency phone numbers is very important. Include a copy of this information in their backpack. Other items to keep in their backpack include water and non-perishable snacks, a pocket-sized first aid kit, a whistle to alert others for help, and a list of allergies, medical conditions, and medications. Make sure their school and teacher have a copy, too. Be familiar with different routes and ways to travel home, like walking, taking the bus, or riding home with another student who lives nearby. Establish a secret code word with your child and whoever takes them home from school to protect against an unauthorized person picking them up. This list is a great starting point to prepare your student for the upcoming school year. Customize these steps to fit your child's capabilities and needs. Ask school administrators and teachers about emergency preparedness plans so you know what steps they are taking to keep your child safe. Many schools have guidelines on how to shelter in place during natural disasters, how to secure classrooms during an emergency lockdown, and how to teach preparedness curriculum to students. Remember, emergency preparedness is important for everyone. Children who are prepared are more confident during stressful emergency situations. By following preparedness guidelines, parents, children, and school staff can improve their safety and peace of mind. For more information on school emergency preparedness, visit cdc.gov/children/schools. To learn more about disasters and emergency preparedness, follow @CDC Emergency on Twitter or visit emergency.cdc.gov. So, let's get prepared. Have a great school year.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
You can help stop the Trump agenda in its tracks. Make sure you're registered to vote. Go to rockthevote.org. And on November 6th, vote for Democrats up and down the ticket. This message, a public service from all the fine people of netrootsradio.com.
Who stole Nelson Mandela's spoon? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. In the New York Times, columnist Roger Cohen tells the story of his recent trip to Robben Island off of Cape Town, South Africa, the jail where Nelson Mandela spent the large majority of his more than one-quarter century of imprisonment. On Robben Island, the tourists were brought to see Mandela's cell, where there was a bowl and a cup and a sleeping mat, and that day a rectangle of blue sky, all in a tiny, tiny space, but no spoon. The guide, himself a former prisoner on Robben Island, told the tourists that they were no longer allowed inside Nelson Mandela's cell because some other tourist had stolen Mandela's spoon. It's too bad you can't go inside that cell any longer to experience what it felt like to spend a day, a year, a decade, and another decade, and years after that in that claustrophobic space. It's harder to imagine what that felt like from the outside looking in than from the inside looking out. This year marks the 100th anniversary of Mandela's birth. His was a life that gives us much to celebrate, although today's continued reality of racism and poverty also gives us much to mourn. We don't know who stole Nelson Mandela's spoon, but we can look at news reports and in the mirror to see who is stealing his dream or allowing it to be stolen. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
Hurricane Florence is on course to make landfall around the South and North Carolina border on Friday as a Category 3 or 4 storm. The National Hurricane Center is warning of a triple threat. Life-threatening freshwater flooding from a prolonged and exceptionally heavy rainfall event from the coast to interior sections, and damaging hurricane-force winds at the coast and some distance inland. Like Hurricane Harvey, which stalled over Texas in 2017, Florence could linger over the southeast for several days after landfall, unloading 15 to 25 inches of rain and isolated amounts of up to 40 inches. Donald Trump held a briefing Tuesday in the Oval Office where he regaled the press with his scientific acumen.
It's tremendously big and tremendously wet. Tremendous amounts of water.
Seriously, Trump had representatives from FEMA and DHS with him, and he bragged about their efforts from 2017's hurricane season.
The job that FEMA and law enforcement and everybody did working along with the governor in Puerto Rico, I think, was tremendous. I think that Puerto Rico was an incredible, unsung success. Texas, we have been given A-pluses for. Florida, we've been given A-pluses for. I think in a certain way, the best job we did was Puerto Rico, but nobody would understand that. I mean, it's harder to understand. It was a very hard thing to do because of the fact they had no electric. Before the storms hit, it was dead, as you probably know. So we've gotten a lot of receptivity, a lot of thanks for the job we've done in Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is very important. And by the way, speaking of Puerto Rico, and they're going to be affected pretty soon by something else that's on its way. Is that right?
Potentially Hurricane Isaac right now is tracking south of the island, but we have several thousand people inside Puerto Rico right now working on long-term recovery that have shifted to the response mode to monitor as Isaac passes to the south.
We do not want to see Hurricane Isaac hit Puerto Rico. That's all we need. But we have a big hurricane out there, and it's sort of skirting along Puerto Rico and the edge of Puerto Rico. That would not be good.
A new independent analysis found that Hurricane Maria was responsible for an estimated 2,975 deaths. Obviously not an unsung success. Just in time for hurricane season, the Trump administration transferred nearly $10 million from FEMA earlier this year to fund immigrant detention and deportation efforts, according to a document released by Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon. Rachel Maddow explains.
Senator Jeff Merkley of Oregon has gotten his hands on a document that has never been seen publicly before, which appears to show that Donald Trump's Department of Homeland Security requested to transfer about $10 million out of the budget for FEMA this year and into the coffers of ICE to support ICE's detention and deportation programs for immigrants. Senator Merkley's office believed the transfer of these funds happened this summer, just in time for hurricane season. The practice of transferring monies between agencies, that is not unusual in itself, but it is unusual to see in one of these documents a whole column full of money being deleted from the FEMA budget less than a year after Hurricane Maria, on the cusp of this year's hurricane season, apparently to bolster the government's ability to lock up and deport immigrants. Nearly $10 million taken out of FEMA, almost all of it going to ICE in order to fund more detention beds and ICE's transportation and removal program.
Senator Sheldon Whitehouse of Rhode Island wants to know if Judge Brett Kavanaugh has ever had a gambling problem. In 2016, Donald Trump's pick for the Supreme Court reported credit card and personal loan debts of between $60,000 and $200,000. Activists are targeting Senators Lisa Murkowski of Alaska and Susan Collins of Maine, two Republican senators who are pro-choice, trying to convince them to vote against the confirmation of Brett Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court. Around 3,000 coat hangers were delivered to Susan Collins' office as a reminder of what could be at stake should Kavanaugh be confirmed. A new crowdfunding PAC has raised over $1 million. If Collins votes against Kavanaugh's confirmation, the money will be returned to donors. If she votes for confirmation, the money will be donated to Collins' opponent in 2020 when she's up for re-election. This is the ad they're running.
Senator, I have called you, I have emailed, I have written letters. Day after day, week after week.
It has been pretty demoralizing to know that your elected representative is ignoring you.
So we're trying something new and hope that this will get your attention. Senator Collins, if you vote for Brett Kavanaugh, we're going to fund your future opponent.
A vote for Kavanaugh is almost certainly a vote to reverse Roe versus Wade.
As a Mainer who has a pre-existing condition, if you vote yes on Kavanaugh, you're voting to kill me.
If he was confirmed to the Supreme Court, he could instantly take away rights for people like me as a non-binary person or people of nearly any marginalized identity.
If you vote to confirm Kavanaugh, we're not going to stop fighting until you're defeated.
Mainers need you to stand up and be a hero.
Be a hero and vote no. And if you don't, we will replace you.
Collins said that campaign was tantamount to a bribe and that she wouldn't allow it to shape her decisions. And that's a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener funded, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
From UN headquarters in New York, I'm Luke Vargas with your World in 2 minutes. Swedish politics could be poised for a shakeup after the far-right anti-immigrant Sweden Democrats notched record support in weekend elections. Swedes increasingly back more restrictive migration policy, though many misjudge the pace of migrant arrivals. In a recent survey, Swedes guessed that 17% of the country's population to be Muslim, far higher than the actual 4.6%. But researchers aren't convinced recent migration waves explain the rise of the Sweden Democrats. Stockholm University professor Johanna Rickne has tied rising support for the Sweden Democrats with the declining fortunes of party supporters.
What we came up with were these two major economic events, the financial crisis, but also a set of policies from the Swedish government that created a lot of income inequality in disposable income.
Sweden Democrats leader Jimmy Åkesson backed those tax cuts and social welfare cuts a decade ago and is now capitalizing on the economic misfortune those policies may have created. To do that, he's painted his party as one of political outsiders, and there is some truth to that.
Most of them had no political experience. They came from marginalized sectors of the labor market.
Political scientists call that pattern of elected officials sharing descriptive traits of their voters, like race, wealth, or gender, descriptive representation.
On the negative side, there are very few women among their politicians. There are few people born outside of Europe. So at the same time that they're strengthening some aspects of descriptive representation, their rise has contributed to lowering some other aspects of descriptive representation.
The Sweden Democrats will soon control 17.5% of the Swedish parliament, and their outsider brand could weaken as they gain political influence. But as recent history in Sweden and the U.S. shows, populist movements built on the grievances of the marginalized can have surprising resonance, whether or not the candidates receiving the votes hold the answers. Luke Vargas, the United Nations.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays. Well, let's begin with weather from around the world, and we always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh yeah, fall. It's fall. We are slated for a high nearly the same as yesterday, about 72 to 74. And then we'll have an overnight low in the upper 40s to low 50s as we did last night. Ever so slight increase in chance of precipitation. We're now up to 30%, which we count on that. That's like, yeah, that's going to happen. And it actually is happening in parts of the state as I speak. Winds currently are out of the southwest at a negligible 1 mile per hour. Will pick up to the usual 5 to 10 miles per hour in just a few hours from now. And when it does that, it will have shifted out of the northwest, will continue out of the northwest through this evening at that clip of 5 to 10 miles per hour, shifting in the morning out of the northwest, and we're slated to have highs tomorrow in the mid-70s, and that will be what we are expected to have for the next several days, and then we'll inch a little bit up into the upper 70s, low 80s for a little bit, and rain in the area, if not on our heads soon. Yes, well, we want it. It will be partly cloudy all day, as it was yesterday. Ragweed pollen is at moderate. I don't think I'm allergic to ragweed, but I'm allergic to something, if you can't tell. Air quality index is good. It's now dropped down to 35, which is fine. I can't wait till it's healthy. And daytime UV index is still pegged at high at 6, though that's way down from the 9 that we were experiencing. Low pressure is beginning to really dominate the region now, and pressure is holding, though, at 29.91 inches. Visibility is up to 9 miles, even though humidity is at 78%. All right. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Okay, London is 59 degrees and partly cloudy. Paris is 82 and sunny. Rome is 87 and sunny with a heat advisory, so take care there. Kiev is 77 and fair. Kabul is 78 and fair. Hong Kong, 77 degrees and partly cloudy. Tokyo is 68 and cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 59 degrees and clear. San Francisco, California is 55 degrees and partly cloudy with a smoke advisory of all things because there's a fire nearby there. And New York is 74 degrees Fahrenheit with a fog advisory from, the big-time hurricane that's hitting the southern seaboard. If you can't see, look out for me. That is Weather from Around the World, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. First offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Smothered Benedict Wednesdays is by Rebecca Entralgo from Think Progress, which, by the way, right-wing trolls and the Weekly Standard somehow is contracted by Facebook to look out for fake news, and they put Think Progress on there because of Think Progress holding various GOP types to task. Come on. Zuckerberg, wake up. The U.S. deficit will approach $1 trillion by the end of this fiscal year. And from this time last year until now, the U.S. deficit grew by $220 billion, reaching a total of $895 billion. And that's by the CBO. The CBO previously did not anticipate reaching $1 trillion until 2020. This latest analysis comes as House Republicans unveil their new round of tax cuts, colloquially named Tax Cuts 2.0. Oh, my God. Yeah, the cuts would add more than $2 trillion of the federal deficit over the next 10 years. A more liberal estimate puts it at $3.4 trillion over the same period, and that's not even accounting for the $1.9 trillion cost of the original GOP tax bill that was passed in December. The second round of tax cuts, spearheaded by House Ways and Means Chairman Kevin Brady, Repug of Texas, aims to fix what the original tax bill did not initially address. For example, while corporations enjoyed a permanent tax cut in the GOP tax bill, individuals and families were only offered a temporary cut that Congress would have to extend by 2025. But those extensions come with a hefty price tag, especially when you have to steal money from FEMA to give to ICE so that you can build supermax tender-age baby prisons. There is a debate among more liberal circles about whether the rising deficits are such a bad thing in the first place. As Stephanie Kelton, a professor at Stony Brook U and former chief economist for the Senate Budget Committee Democratic staff, has pointed out, adding $1.5 trillion to the deficit isn't such a bad thing, so long as the money is going toward helping struggling people. But that is not what the Republicans are doing. No, they're putting it in accounts so it can be easily changed from a foreign currency, from a hostile foreign power, into dollars, so that they can more easily move about the world and take it over. And that's not a conspiracy theory. The fact that Republicans, who for decades complained of rising debt under the Obama administration, are now seemingly fine with record-high deficit is a bit of a surprise. I don't think so. I'm old enough to know that they've done this repeatedly, but when factoring in how many Republicans are personally benefiting from the tax cuts, it is right in line with how the party has traditionally operated.
Je te donne ce mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer, mes automnes quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Patrick Rucker of Reuters brings us this last offering here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. U.S. regulators have rejected Wells Fargo and Company's plan to repay customers who were pushed into unnecessary auto insurance, telling the bank it must do more to ensure it has found and compensated every affected driver. Wells Fargo gave regulators a plan in June. As required by a $1 billion settlement the bank reached with the CFPB and the Office of the Comptroller and the Currency in April. And, of course, we know the CFPB wanted to squelch all of that, and they were not successful. After reviewing the plan, which could involve contracting some 600,000 drivers, the OCC told Wells Fargo it needed more assurances that the bank would find and repay everyone who was overcharged. And the rejection is the latest wrinkle in Wells Fargo's long-running sales scandal, which began in September of 2016 with revelations that the bank had opened perhaps millions of accounts in customers' names without permission to hit aggressive sales targets. Since then, Wells Fargo has disclosed more customer abuses in businesses including mortgage lending, wealth management, and the auto loans issue now. Well. You know what? That brings us to the end of our broadcasting period for the day, but of course Netroots Radio broadcasts on throughout the day. We'll visit with you tomorrow for Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Stay tuned to Netroots Radio for all the breaking news as it's breaking. And it's breaking, of course, right now. So we will visit with you tomorrow in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. À fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goer. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-dee-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.